Okay, it's 8:31, so I'd like to call the Planning and Stakeholders Relations meeting to order. Correct me if wrong, we'll do a roll call of the members of the committee and then a roll call of board members. Is that what, I'm trying to remember, is that what we do, or is that just for the board meetings?
No, that's correct, John. Thank you.
Okay, so committee members, would you identify yourself, please?
Jessica Walsville.
Jesse?
Ann O'Gorick.
Okay, committee members identified. Board members, will you identify yourself, please?
Michelle Smianik. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lori Misgorski.
Jennifer Liptak.
Jerry DeLon.
Well, thank committee members and board members for joining the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee meeting today. The first item on the agenda is the minutes. I take it everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing no corrections, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. This is Ann.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded, Jessica.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. All in favor of approval of the minutes as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes were approved. Now, I guess we're going to talk about next on the agenda is the Transit-Oriented Community 5-year program trends and findings. Maura, are you going to present today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You're up.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Maura Egler. I am the Transit-Oriented Communities Project Manager in the Planning and Service Development Department. And this morning, I'm going to talk about our 5-year program trends analysis and findings. So this analysis is called the 5-year indicators. It builds upon the work of our TOD guidelines, so Transit-Oriented Development Guidelines, to get a current picture of TOD in Allegheny County after 5 years of the Port Authority having a formal program, TOC or Transit-Oriented Communities Program. This report reflects on successes and opportunities for improvement, and it will inform our goals as a program moving forward. So there's two parts of this analysis. The first is a data analysis of various variables that we identified as being impacted by the presence or absence of TOD. We used a combination of census data, our own ridership data, as well as Allegheny County data. We looked at the half-mile walk sheds, so the half-mile radius around our 69 fixed guideway stations, and compared changes in variables between 2013 and 2018, as this was the most recent data available at the time. We also looked at the same data at the county level to compare. We also conducted a partner survey of local institutions and organizations to assess the local understanding of attitudes towards TOD. All right, next slide, I guess. Okay. So these are the goals and principles found in our TOD guidelines. They guided our analysis and helped to determine which variables to look at to measure success. So we tried to find indicators that were tied to each one of these to measure them in a quantitative way. So we looked at accessibility, sustainability, affordable housing, public health, and mode priority, which basically refers to Port Authority prioritizing projects that provide safer, more convenient access to transit for pedestrians. Next slide. So we found several major trends throughout our analysis. Where it does occur, transit-oriented development brings changes in housing and demographics data. In areas where little TOD activity occurred, there was little change across the board in all variables. However, where development has occurred, evidence of displacement and decreasing housing affordability was significant. There were positive changes as well, like the increase in the number of jobs in the area, as well as increase in the general population. But in order to live up to the principles, goals, and values we've set for ourselves as an agency, we must find a way to encourage more equitable, transit-oriented development in the future. Next slide. So we did a lot of analysis as part of this report, and these are just the high-level findings. This is all available on our website. The full report is on our Transit-Oriented Communities website, so you can review in detail. But we looked again at all these variables at the county level and then at our half-mile walk shed. So the trend is that little change occurred in any of these variables along the West Busway and most of our light rail transit walk sheds. The biggest changes across in the 5 years across all variables happened along the East Busway and in the downtown station areas. So for demographics, there was little change in the total population at the county level, but there were significant population increases in East Liberty and downtown. At the county level, there was little change in the racial composition of the population, but a decrease in the Black population in most East Busway station areas, with notable increases in Swissvale and Roslyn. So for housing, there was an increase in the total number of units in East Liberty and downtown, but both median rent and home value increased across the board, so in all geographies, including West Busway and our light rail transit lines. But the most telling housing information was related to affordability. So as an indicator of affordable housing need and supply, we looked at the change in the number of housing cost burden households. Housing cost burden households are those that are paying over 30% of their income to housing. So we saw a significant increase in those households, both at the county level as well as the walkshed level across all of our geographies. So the biggest increases were along the East Busway, but we did see small increases in those households along West Busway and LRT lines as well. Finally, employment. We saw large increases in the number of jobs in Station Square and North Shore station areas, as well as along the East Busway, again, Negley and East Liberty in particular. We did see a decrease in the number of jobs in Homewood. Interestingly, we saw a shift in sectors as well. So in Negley and East Liberty, we lost jobs in wholesale trade and manufacturing, but gained many jobs in tech industry jobs like professional, scientific, and technical services. So finally, sorry, there's one more, ridership. Looking at pre-pandemic numbers, we did see an increase across the board. A small shift in mode split, meaning the way that people get to work. Along in downtown and East Busway, we saw more people biking and walking in these walk sheds over time. So I'll just keep going. No.
If someone took control of the screen, could you give it back to us, please? I think it's someone external, perhaps.
All right.
You haven't been hacked, have we?
No.
I'm sure who would hack our meetings?
It's just folks using this new platform, John.
Okay. So next slide. Thank you. Okay, so we used the results of this analysis to create recommendations for policies and programs that the Port Authority and our partner agencies could adopt to further the goals of our TOC program and support the creation of equitable TOD in the county. So these were 7 broad categories of recommendations based on our analysis, as well as research into other kind of similar agency policies. And each one of these has several different recommendations, but I'll just kind of summarize the high level, most priority ones. So the creation of an equitable TOD plan to outline specific steps that we will take as an agency to encourage eTOD or equitable TOD on our property. For zoning, we could enhance our zoning advocacy by building upon the previous work we've done with our partner Connect and collaborate with stakeholders and communities to amend zoning codes to incentivize higher density development near transit. For affordable housing, we could consider adopting an inclusionary housing policy for development on our property. We could also explore creating a discounted land policy like some agencies like BART have policies like this that offer discounted purchase or lease rates for joint development partners who pursue affordable housing projects. Finally, we could encourage employment-based TOD. So consider incentives that encourage non-residential development and construction in areas with little access to employment currently. So again, this was a very high level summary. This is all kind of available on our website now. But the biggest takeaway is that while TOD brings positive changes, it's only happening in concentrated areas and is creating equity issues where it does occur. So we need to find a balance of encouraging more TOD in places where it's not occurring and ensuring that what we do encourage is equitable. Thank you.
Is that, okay, first of all, a couple questions. One, when we're looking at affordability, we also look at accessibility, right? I mean, that's part of it. In other words, accessible units being developed. Now, I know there's some requirements by law, but the reality of it is what are we doing in that? Are we tracking any of that? I know we're tracking affordability. What about accessibility, Maura?
Yeah, so for accessibility, we looked at variables like the sidewalk network. We looked at sort of how within these walk sheds, the quality of the sidewalks around our stations. One of the kind of infrastructure investment recommendations is to anticipate TOD investment by providing infrastructure like improved sidewalks first to kind of pave the way literally for development and ensure that it's accessible as well. So we used mostly the kind of sidewalk conditions to look at that.
Well, which is great, by the way. I was talking more about units to make sure that what's being developed follow federal guidelines on affordability, not affordability, but accessibility of units when things are being developed.
Yeah, we didn't actually look at that specifically, but we definitely plan to update this on a regular basis. So we definitely add variables in the future. So it's definitely something to add to our list.
Well, right. That's it. In other words, I'm making that request that we add that to our when we update things. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
The other question I had in reference to employment, we have an indication. You were talking about types of jobs. We have an indication on what these jobs pay.
We did do that analysis actually. We used census data to get an idea of kind of typical wages in the walk shed. I don't have the information in front of me right now, but I can certainly point you to that in the final report. But we did look at wages as part of this analysis.
Thank you. Are there any questions of committee members? Board members? Oh, go ahead. Board members? Okay, what about any stakeholders on the call? Any questions? Maura?
Hey, this is Dan Yablonsky from Pittsburghers for Public Transit. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sure, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And this is just tagging on to John's question. Was there also research about who's getting those jobs? Like, are the jobs that are coming being filled by people from the neighborhood?
We didn't get into that level of specificity with this analysis, but it's something definitely we can look into. I'm not sure that that's available at the census with census data, but we can look for other resources and future analyses for that.
Adding to Dan's question, what would be interesting is, in other words, about employment of folks in the neighborhood, but on the other hand, what about gender and about race and ethnicity? Did we look at any of that?
Yes, we do have that data available for employment.
Okay, all right. Now that's all that information is going to be on the website. Is that what you said? Am I correct?
Yes, it's in the final report, which is on our website and the Transit-Oriented Communities page. And it's we put it under the TOD guidelines section. We can probably add a link in the chat to that.
That would be great. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for the update on the transit-oriented development and transit-oriented community. Thank you, Maura. Next on the agenda is next up, I keep doing the wrong thing, keep pulling the wrong thing up. Next on is customer service and safety in the access system. Darcy Cleaver and I think Emily, you're going to do the presentation. David, you're going to do a brief introduction. And I wanted to also emphasize the fact that even though we contract with a third party to provide paratransit services, access is an integral part of and a very important part of our transit system. So anyways, go ahead, David.
Thank you, John, and members of the committee. I'm David Huffaker, the Chief Development Officer, and this presentation you're going to hear is actually a follow-on to the customer service presentation for the overall fixed route service that we provided last month. John Beeler and his team walked you through that, but we also wanted to let you know how the customer service functions work on the access program and also give a little report out on our safety and safety compliance. And so I'm going to introduce Emily Gouache, the Director of Compliance for Access, who will walk us through this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. My name is Emily Gouache. I'm the Director of Compliance here at Access. And I'm going to talk today about two things that we think really set Access apart in terms of quality and scope of service, and then talk a little bit about safety and a particular safety program that we think has had a sizable impact on our safety compliance. Next slide, please. Great. So I first want to talk about some things that typically people think of when they think of traditional customer service, and that's our call center. Right now we have 4 full-time call center employees and 1 part-time person. We do have an open position. Everybody is working in the office right now, but we do have voice over IP technology. So that was really helpful, of course, when during the pandemic, or the part of the pandemic where we were working remotely. Currently, our call center is handling about 8,500 calls per month, which is actually equivalent with pre-pandemic call levels. In terms of questions, the questions that they get the most are, what is the service and how do I sign up? So then we're sending out applications, getting people onto the program. And the second question is, how do I deposit funds into our electronic fare payment system, which is called an e-purse or an electronic purse. We work with over 100 different sponsoring agencies, and we really like to think of those agencies as customers as well. So we want to be responsive to their particular needs and their requirements of their programs that we are providing service for. A good example of this is the Area Agency on Aging, who sponsor a program called Older Persons Transportation. We provide the service for that. And they have a lot of different trip types where they go to different places. And I'm just turning my volume down, sorry. They go to different places, they have different fares and different requirements for those types of trips. So our call center staff is really integral in working not only with the agency, but with the riders that are using that program to make sure everyone understands the requirements. Next slide, please. Great. So now I want to talk about some customer service activities that we manage that are maybe not considered traditional or what people automatically think of when they hear customer service. The first is incident reporting and follow-up. All of our staff and drivers are trained to report different kinds of incidents that occur with our riders. They could, in certain situations, rise to the level of potentially being dangerous for our riders. So there are times where we work with other agencies, including protective services, to get riders assistance that they may need. All drivers have a onboard tablet, sort of like an iPad, and there is a function called change of condition where they can record up to 4 minutes of audio and explain to us an incident or a concern they have for a rider, so we have those details. Examples could be an issue perhaps with hygiene, maybe there's a safety or inaccessibility issue at somebody's home, and sometimes riders express concerns about their living situations to drivers. So they have a way to get that information to us and we can deal with it appropriately. We also offer mobility management from our call center, where instead of people needing to go out and figure out what transportation funding they're eligible for, we say, come to us, tell us about yourself, and we'll help you understand what you're eligible for and get you signed up. Reasonable modification is really important to access. Of course, it's a part of the ADA, but something that we've always done. If there is an access policy or procedure or rule that prevents somebody from using the service effectively due to their disability, we take a look at that request on a case-by-case basis and figure out, can we make a change here so this person can use the system? An example that's common is we typically assist up or down 4 steps. So some people request assistance with additional steps, and we take a look at those situations and make an assessment. We also really want people with disabilities to use the fixed route system when they can, so we offer transit trip planning. We help them plan their entire trip, including the accessible path of travel to and from their bus stops. And we have staff who can ride along with somebody if they want someone to go with them on their first fixed route trip. I mentioned that a question that our call center often receives is, how do I deposit money online? So we've been experimenting with video instruction on our website where it walks you through exactly what you need to do. It provides screenshots and instructions. So we're hoping to expand that to other customer service questions that we get frequently. And finally, we really try to find solutions for everybody to use this service, and they're very personalized. We work with you on really any question you have and try to find a way for you to be on access. A good example of this is our hand-to-hand service. Hand-to-hand service goes beyond our typical door-to-door service. So if somebody needs assistance to the door and then they can't be left alone, we make sure that somebody is there to meet them. There's a responsible individual that they're handed off to. So that's a way for people who need that to still use the service independently, which is really important. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to now talk about some of the ways that we keep the access system safe. Of course, the very first step is screening our drivers. We want to make sure we have appropriate candidates, so those requirements are pretty rigorous. Once they are screened and hired, they go through the training curriculum that we developed, which is very specific to the way that Access operates. It not only is preparing drivers with those standard operating procedures that go along with paratransit, but also preparing them for the unexpected things that might not be happening with every trip, but here and there, things definitely pop up. Our service provider safety managers are really important. They're conducting regular and follow-up monitoring of all of our drivers. They're also helping us make those assessments of locations where it might not be a safe pickup or drop off. We need to make a plan to make sure we can get somebody in and out of their house. So they're going on location to help us with those plans. All of our providers have agency safety plans as required by the Federal Transit Administration. So our service providers use that to assess their performance, to mitigate risk, but it also allows us at the Access main office to ensure that providers are meeting standards that are set for the entire system. We conduct maintenance audits, USDOT audits, training audits, drug and alcohol, just to name a few. And I did just briefly talk about follow-up and regular monitoring that our service provider safety managers conduct, but I want to speak about that program a little bit more. It's something we developed to really target safety compliance and standardize follow-up for all of our system and all of our service providers. Next slide, please. Great. So there's really two things to understand about driver monitoring. The first is, what do we consider monitoring? Monitoring is when someone who's qualified to do so observes a driver. It could be in person or it could be via our onboard video. The second part is, what is the program? The program is what prescribes those monitoring requirements, and then it provides documentation and tracks completion, which without those, it wouldn't be getting done. Next slide, please. So when I say it prescribes monitoring, we're primarily talking about monitoring that follows some kind of event, and that event probably required corrective action. So examples could be a complaint that we receive, or it could be a safety event that's sometimes called an accident, or it could be something that was observed. So there's monitoring happening all the time. When somebody starts driving on their own, they're monitored, and each quarter there are requirements for monitoring for all drivers. So, next slide, please. The meat of this program is pretty intuitive. It uses this color scale that everybody's pretty familiar with. Red indicates we're dealing with something pretty serious, and when we're dealing with something serious, the monitoring requirements are more. There's more monitoring that needs to be done when something is red. So an example of that would be, I spoke about our hand-to-hand procedure. If a driver failed to ensure a rider was handed off to a responsible person, that would certainly be very serious and end up in a red category. In that case, a safety manager is going to be monitoring that driver, and every time they have hand-to-hand riders, for up to 6 months. They're going to be making sure that corrective action is effective, and if something is wrong, they're going to be checking in with that driver and making some other kind of action to make sure that that driver understands the corrective action. Next slide, please. So that's a lot to keep track of. Since 6 months of monitoring is a lot of dates. So we've integrated our in-house software Infinity, which keeps track of drivers and issues, with a really easy to use Microsoft program that keeps track of dates. It keeps track of driver names and what people need to do to complete monitoring. But using that really clear scale with the colors, it also gives us and providers a visual of performance. So they can see what colors are popping up a lot, if they're popping up with certain drivers, and make assessments about performance based on that. Next slide, please. So of course the question is, did this program achieve what it set out to do? And we're happy to say the answer is yes. We've seen a decrease in total reportable safety events to the NTD. So those would be safety events that are on a more serious level. We exceeded our system's 2020 annual safety performance targets. And although this program is reactionary, we're following up to some kind of event, it also means there's just more monitoring happening in our system. So it provides an opportunity for safety managers to check in, see maybe a habit that a driver's picked up, and address it before it becomes some kind of event. Like I mentioned, we're able to recognize patterns in performance, especially using that color scale that sets a standard. Everybody understands it. We've seen an increase in customer satisfaction with driver assistance and courtesy in our monthly surveys. And finally, we've actually recently taken the structure of this program and applied it to call center monitoring. So it's certainly been adaptable in other areas of our service. Next slide. That's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those, or you can send me an email, which is on the screen. With that, I'll turn it back over to John. Oh, you're muted, John.
Jeff was on, he would like that. Anyways, Darcy, do you want to add anything? I'm not sure whether you were going to speak at all, so I want to know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I don't think so. Thank you, John.
Okay. A couple of questions, and you might have touched upon this. How we're handling this through COVID. You know, what are our policies and procedures in reference to things like testing or things like required shots or anything like that? Are we addressing any of that?
In terms of testing, we follow all the CDC procedures. If a driver is believes they are exposed or has tested positive. And then, of course, there's deep cleaning happening regularly, but of course, if anyone were to test positive, that vehicle is pulled from service right away. That includes if we're alerted to a rider that tested positive, that vehicle is pulled from service. And of course, we want everyone to be vaccinated if they can be. That is the goal.
Right, and now I assume that, are we at full capacity on the vans? I don't think we are we?
Yes, there are no capacity constraints right now on the vans. So they're probably not full of 14 people at this point, just because ridership is not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels, but there are no constraints at a certain time.
Driver levels?
They're not where they were. They're not where we would like them to be. Providers are working really hard to hire people. It's certainly a challenge like it is elsewhere, but I think yesterday I heard that we made 7 new driver badges, so that's a good sign. We're working in the right direction.
Right, because a lot of transit providers have issues, including the authority with drivers, so I understand that.
Yeah.
One last question. In the beginning, you were talking about incidents, you were talking about recording incidents. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Sure.
Because I wasn't quite sure, meaning that if I'm on the van and I'm acting up, what happens? Does the driver record that, or how does that work?
So it depends on the type of incident. If it's something that needs immediate attention, somebody needs help right away, or we need to call someone immediately, the driver's going to be alerting the dispatcher via radio, I have an issue, and then probably calling it on their cell phone just to prevent any people overhearing it via other radios. But if it's something that, the driver can report maybe after they've dropped somebody off, they have a concern, their tablet has a recording option. So it's just a way for them to speak about it rather than wait to write it down and maybe miss details. So they have 4 minutes to describe a concern to us, and then at that point we determine if it's something that we either need to talk to the rider about, or we can refer it to another agency who might be able to provide assistance to that person. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. I think there was and Mike Petter's on the call. One of the issues we had a while was about recording riders. In other words,
right.
that was the concern that we had about recording riders. For example, if the driver's recording, the riders are going to hear that recording, right?
Right. So it's sort of just like talking into a phone. And we wouldn't expect that they do it, right there in front of other people. It's when you have a couple minutes, between trips that you could do this, not with everybody else. But no, riders are not recorded at all.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Anyways, are there any questions of committee members? Okay, seeing no questions from our committee members, do you have any questions of Emily? Okay, any stakeholders on the call that have a question for Emily?
This is Dan again from PBT. Is this slide deck available somewhere? I'm not seeing it on the website.
We can make it available after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Emily, Darcy, and David. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. This is Jessica.
Second?
Second.
Okay, meeting stands in adjournment until next month. Thank you very much for your presentations, and also thank you for board members that have and committee members that have joined the call today. All right, I guess I'll just, the meeting stands in adjournment until next month. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we'll give everyone a minute to shuffle their papers around, get situated for the Finance Committee. All right, I'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for October 21st, 2021. Our first agenda item is a roll call. Board Member Liptak, are you present? Representative Davis?
Here.
Hi, Jen, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Board Member DeLon?
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. And any other board members that have joined this morning, could you say your name, please?
Jeff Letwin.
Michelle
Lori
Smianik.
Mizgorski,
Jessica Walsaville.
Thank you. Okay, our second agenda item is approval of the meeting minutes from September 16th. Any questions or revisions to the meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. And our next agenda item are two proposed resolutions for the month. The first is authorization to extend and amend agreement with Marquette Associates, Inc. to provide Chief Investment Officer Services. Pete, what do we need to know?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board Chair Letwin. I have one resolution for your consideration, and this is an authorization to amend and extend agreement to provide CIO consulting services, which are Chief Investment Officer Services for the Consolidated Pension Plan. Just a reminder, the Consolidated Pension Plan covers eligible employees of non-union, IBEW, and police personnel. It is a closed pension plan, so there's no new entrants into this particular pension plan. The CIO services include, but are not limited to, recommending a investment policy and strategy to the pension committee, recommending an allocation of assets and assets between different asset classes, and finally recommending alternative asset managers to the trustees on the pension committee for their approval. As I mentioned, the consolidated plan covers the non-union IBEW and police employees. Back in September of 2018, the board approved an award to Marquette Associates for a 3-year term and a not to exceed amount of $643,930. It also included 2 option years at the sole discretion of the authority. Next slide. This initial term expires in November 30th of 2021. We've determined that it's in the best interest to exercise the first option year, which would extend the agreement to November 30th of 2022. This would increase the not to exceed amount by $223,850 and would increase the total not to exceed to $867,780. It is also mentioned, and it will be a good segue into a presentation by Sue Brodus from our MBE department, that there is that Marquette uses financial integrity resources management to do about 20% of the work on the deferred compensation portion of the contract. So worth mentioning, and Sue will get into further detail on our MBE program after Mike Setra presents a resolution. Can I answer any questions on this?
Any questions of committee members? Any questions of other board members? Do I have a motion to approve sending this resolution to the board next week?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And our next resolution is authorization to adopt Customer Service Department teleworking policy. Mike.
Good morning, Madam Committee Chairwoman and committee members. The resolution that I have for the committee's consideration this morning would authorize Port Authority to to adopt and implement a teleworking policy for its IBW Local 29 represented customer service department or our call center personnel. In June of 2021, Port Authority's board adopted a resolution ratifying an amended collective bargaining agreement between Port Authority and IBW, which IBW represents approximately 60 plus employees in various capacities in the agency, including in our service center, in our payroll, and some other administrative clerk functions. And that was for a 2-year term from May 1, 2021 through April 30th, 2023. Among other items that were part of that agreement, the agreement included a provision that the parties would form a joint management union remote work committee to discuss the potential for remote work opportunities within the customer service department and a potential policy for same. And it did provide that any policy that the committee may come to a consensus on would ultimately be subject to Port Authority board review and approval. In management's thinking, and I talked about this back in June, we presented the resolution to ratify the agreement. The management's thinking behind remote work was really twofold. It was, ultimately a goal to expand the customer service call center hours, which obviously is much more feasible if you have individuals that can work remotely, and also trying to increase employment opportunities for individuals with mobility or other disabilities that may find it challenging to come to our downtown offices Monday through Friday at 5 or Saturdays 5 days a week, being able to have an opportunity to work a hybrid schedule under this program. So following the board's ratification, we did form a joint remote work committee that included representatives from Port Authority Management and our employee relations group and representatives from IBW. Thanks, Diane. I did form a joint committee to discuss and did ultimately develop a proposed customer service department teleworking policy. A copy of that proposed policy is included as Exhibit A to the resolution in members' packets this morning. And I would highlight it includes employee eligibility requirements that must be met before a customer service department employee will be considered for remote work, basically all geared towards that the customer service representative has baseline competency, has a good attendance and performance record before they would be considered for a remote work, hybrid work type of schedule. Again, it's a program that would be hybrid in nature, so there would be a mix of in-office and remote work depending on scheduling. There were also various performance monitoring and evaluation measures to ensure that employees that are teleworking continue to be productive and efficient as far as their call clearance and email clearance, complaint clearance targets, et cetera. And importantly, the policy reserves the right at Port Authority's discretion to amend, suspend, or otherwise terminate the policy if our business needs change, if the program's not found not to be effective, with notice to IBW and any affected employees. Subject to any member questions, I would respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution authorizing adoption and implementation of the customer service department teleworking policy to the full board for approval.
Thank you. Any questions of the committee?
Yeah, this is Jen. I have a question. This is not an amendment to the contract, correct?
That is correct. This is a standalone policy. It was just the provision in the contract to form the committee provided that the policy itself, if a policy was developed between the committee, that it would come back to the board for review and approval.
Okay, it seems strange. We normally wouldn't approve some type of work. I mean, this is a management function, so that's why I'm curious as to why it's coming before the board, because it's not an amendment to a contract. It's basically a management decision. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do most of the people who would be eligible for this, do they work like 5 days a week, or is it kind of all over the place, 3, 5, 6?
They typically work 5 days a week, though, because we do have weekend and evening hours. Their schedules can shift like a standard. It's not always a standard like Monday 9 to 5 type of schedule.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, I actually have another question. So what was the impetus behind developing this? I understand there was contract discussions, but we're working normal hours now. So is this in order to provide additional customer service hours, as you said, like 24/7?
I think Catherine wants to field this one. Excuse me, I'm going to move out of the way here.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That is correct. We had been discussing this flexible schedule with our IBW staff prior to February of 2020. One of the concerns had been when we are trying to fill these hours of folks coming in at 5 in the morning or folks staying really late in the evening, that if we want somebody to be available on the phone the entire time that our network is running, we can't then have them leave work and take a bus to get home. And it turned out to be much more attractive and easier to fill these shifts if somebody could work from home, get up at whatever time in the morning and be on the laptop working within a really short time frame. So we had these conversations prior to the pandemic. It's more based on that function of what is the easiest way for us to cover these shifts, especially let's consider snow days. If we have inclement weather days, now we would have the ability to cover customer service without everyone having to come in on what would already be a challenging day. That's one example.
Okay, thank you.
It's John, one comment I would make, I think it also gives an opportunity to hire folks with disabilities. I think that's also, from my perspective, a good thing. In other words, so it gives them that opportunity. Mike addressed it a little bit in the resolution. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
And if I could just add briefly in regards to as far as this policy moving forward, yes, it would be management administered moving forward. The resolution provides that as well.
Okay, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to authorize sending this to the board for next week?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is a presentation by Sue Brodus, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Diverse Business Program Overview.
Good morning, board members, committee members, senior staff. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you the functions of my office. I am Sue Brodus, the DBE Program Manager for the Port Authority. The main functions for my office are certification, contract compliance, and outreach. Certification component of the office. Port Authority of Allegheny County is one of the 5 certifying agencies for the Pennsylvania Unified Certification Program, where we certify minority, women, and disadvantaged businesses as DBEs. This DBE certification is required for firms that wish to participate as subcontractors and count towards DBE goal requirements for federally funded projects that have federal transportation funds, be it through the FAA, the Federal Transit Administration, or the Federal Highway Administration. The PAUCP offers a one-stop shopping opportunity for certification for firms interested in applying for certification. I'm sorry, I have to take my glasses off. The nice thing about the PAUCP is that there are 5 certifying agencies, of which, as I stated, Port Authority is one of them. There is also Allegheny County Department of Equity and Inclusion, the Philadelphia International Airport, PennDOT, and SEPTA. The 5 certifying agencies make all final determinations for eligibility for participation in the DBE program. Therefore, firms that are certified with the PAUCP are eligible to participate on any federally funded transportation project as a DBE or an ACDBE. DBE meaning disadvantaged business, ACDBE meaning airport concessionaire disadvantaged business enterprise. Once a firm is certified with any of the 5 certifying agencies, there is reciprocity with the others. This certification is widely accepted not only with the certifying agencies themselves, but with the various levels of government, starting with the city of Pittsburgh and their authorities, Allegheny County government and their authorities, UPMC, the Pittsburgh Board of Education, the various CCAC. It is a widely acceptable certification. And the nice thing about the certification is there is no fee to the applicant when they are applying. The requirements for DBE certification, 1, you must be a for-profit business. 2, it must be at least 51% owned by 1 or more individuals that are both socially and economically disadvantaged. The socially disadvantaged groups being Black American, Hispanic American, Native American, Asian Pacific Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, women, and other minorities found to be considered disadvantaged by the SBA. Economically disadvantaged means that the firm's gross receipts for the average of 3 years cannot exceed $26.29 million. As of January of 2022, that will be changed. We will now do the calculations based on a 5-year period rather than 3. The other component of the economically disadvantaged status means that the disadvantaged owner or applicant's personal net worth cannot exceed $1.32 million. So the basic components for the certification functions for our office is that we will process the new applications. We will also process interstate applications. Every state in the United States has a unified certification program for DBE certification, which follows the same governing regulations and guidelines, 49 CFR Part 23, that dictates how the DBE program is going to operate, as well as the certification process for the DBEs. So with that being said, firms that are located out of state that may perhaps want to do business with the state of Pennsylvania and are required to have the DBE certification will have a shorter process. Another part of that is that we monitor and process annual affidavits, annual no change affidavits. Once a firm is certified and approved certification, that certification does not expire. However, each year, the firm is required to submit an annual no change affidavit and provide a copy of their latest business tax returns so that we can do the size analysis to ensure that the firm continues to meet the eligibility requirements. Let's see here. The next is, no, go back to the previous slide, please. Another process that we are required to do is review notice of changes. If a firm happens to have any changes in ownership, percentage of ownership, change in officers, change of business location, they must report that to their certifying agency 30 days within 30 days of those changes, and we will request support documentation to substantiate those changes. Then the last thing is that we continue constantly to audit our certification files for the firms that we maintain the certification files for, to ensure that we have all of the required documentation, annual affidavits, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. This is just basic statistics on currently. When I started in February of 2019, we had 152 firms that were certified with by the Port Authority of Allegheny County. That number has now increased to 186 as of September 30th of this year. That number is actually increased now because I have 4 apps that I am about to do the approval for, which was resulted in an increase of 22.37% increase. That is my goal to constantly increase the number of firms that are currently certified with the Port Authority, which will also increase the number of registered vendors that want to do business with the Port Authority as well. As of September 30th, we had received 31 new applications. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides are just a breakdown of the genders, the breakdown of the firms that are currently certified. As you can see, out of the 186, there are 113 that are women-owned businesses and 73 that are minority. And that's just a pie graph to that breakdown. The next slides will break down the ethnicity of the MBE firms based on the various socially disadvantaged groups. And the next slide after that is a pie chart of those firms. Next slide, please. That concludes the certification component of it. The next component of my office is the contract compliance. We are responsible for discussing the DBE and diverse business requirements during all information and pre-bid meetings to inform the contractors, the bidders, and the proposers of what their requirements are for the utilization of disadvantaged business enterprises or diverse business, depending on how that particular project is funded. We also do the evaluation of those DBE and diverse business firms that the contractors and the proposers are submitted to ensure that these firms are indeed certified and they are certified in the capacity that they are being proposed to be utilized in. And we also participate in the RFP ranking reviews, and we're focusing on the DBE and diverse business participation. Next slide, please. Explanation for the DBE participation for all federally funded projects that have federal transportation funds. We must have a DBE program. And in accordance with the Code of Regulation, Federal Regulations 49 CFR Part 23, we have DBE goals set on those federally funded projects. My office will evaluate each scope of service for each project that is getting ready to be bid out and identify the areas of subcontract opportunities for the certified DBEs and calculate a DBE goal. Firms that wish to participate on these projects and count towards the DBE goals must be certified with the PAAC. Next slide, please. Another part of our compliance is that we do reporting, and these figures here on this slide are the figures that we reported to the FTA for our semi-annual reports. For the state-funded projects, there are no goals. We are not permitted to set diverse business goals. Contractors are required to identify and submit to us their good faith efforts documentation for their searches for diverse businesses to participate on these contracts. While there's no goal set, our office is still requiring and reviewing the documentation for each of the proposers for their diverse business participation. And I wanted to define to you what a diverse business is. A diverse business is inclusive of DBEs, as well as minority-owned businesses, which are MBEs, women-owned businesses, WBEs, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses. Those all are considered diverse businesses. The state governing regulations are the regulations that we follow, which dictate that we cannot set a specific goal for a DBE or diverse business goal on these projects, that the good faith effort documentation is used. Next slide, please. Another report that we have to submit to is the state, to PennDOT for the state funded projects. And this is a breakdown of the monies, of the dollars that were awarded for professional service and construction projects and the DBE total awards. I'm sorry, diverse business total awards. Next slide, please. This next couple of slides are just the number of contracts, RFPs, construction projects that we have done DBE and diverse business evaluations for. Scroll to the next. As I stated previously, part of the compliance is that we have to do the reporting to the FTA, to the state, and also to Allegheny County for our dollar spends. And we also are responsible for submitting our goal methodology for the triennial goals for the next 3 years. Next slide. And then the last component of my office is outreach. Since we are very proactive in trying to encourage any and all eligible minority and women-owned business to become certified with the PAAC, we do a lot of outreach. We attend networking events, trade shows. I give PAAC DBE certification presentations. We participate on various committees associated with minority, women, and small business assistance organizations. Next slide, please. These are just stats on our outreach efforts for the past 2 years. We offer individual certification counseling appointments. As I stated before, I am very proactive in trying to encourage any business owner that I encounter to go through the certification process, especially with the PAAC, because it's free. There are several other certifications, but a lot of them have a fee associated with them. And those individual certification counseling appointments that I offer to these firms helps them answers their questions and takes away the overwhelmed feeling when they first take a look at the initial application and personal net worth form. Next slide. As I stated, those last 2 slides were just stats on the number of outreach and networking events and individual certification counseling appointments that my office does. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
How long does it take a company to kind of get through the certification process?
Our governing regulations dictates that any certifying agency has 90 days upon receipt of a complete application with an additional 60-day extension if necessary to process an application.
Okay. And then as far as the state process goes, where you a consultant or a contractor only has to show good faith efforts to include diverse businesses. When they show diverse businesses on their team, they don't have to be the PAAC certified.
No, we also accept the Department of General Services. There's a list, which is a self-certification, but they have to upload proof that they are currently certified either with the PAAC is the DBE certification, WEBAC, the National Association of Minority Suppliers Development Council, or the Veterans Association, or the Service Disabled.
Okay, right. So there's other entities that provide that documentation.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from other board members?
Just a comment. I'm really impressed with the work you've done, Susie. It looks really, really good. And
thank you.
You obviously take it very, very seriously, which I appreciate.
Thank you. I'm very fortunate enough to say I am one of the very, very few people that can honestly say I love my job. I love what I do. I love working with the small business community, and I've been doing this for quite some years, even prior to me coming to the Port Authority.
Well, Catherine loves her job also.
Thank you. That was go ahead, Michelle.
It's Michelle Smianek. I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was a very thorough and very positive report. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for granting me this opportunity.
Yep.
You guys have a great day.
Me too.
Two.
Okay, our final agenda item is a review of the September 2021 financial statements. Welcome to that.
Good morning again. So we are at the first quarter of the financial year for September 30th. Our total operating income for the month continued to be below budget. We were $4.2 million below budget and $12.1 million below budget from a total operating income perspective for the first quarter. And much as last fiscal year and partial fiscal year before that, we are going to use CARES funding to offset the shortfall. On a good news front, our total expenses were $4.1 million under budget for the month of September and continue to trend under budget for the fiscal year. We're $16.1 million under budget for the fiscal year. Some of the drivers to that is that our wages and salaries are below budget due to vacant positions. Consequently, our employee expenses are also below budget due to lower healthcare costs because of the vacant positions and also lower vacation, holiday, and sick pay expense. Some other drivers are materials and supply expense are trending below budget, and this is primarily due to lower material expense, reconditioned unit expense, and also supply expense. Our purchase services are below budget, and that's predominantly due to lower marketing, work done by outside contractors, and also other service expense. Our other expense category is below budget, and that's primarily due to lower software licensing expense. From a subsidy perspective, we are $9.04 million under budget, and that's due to federal stimulus invoicing and also a timing issue on the state operating assistance. As I mentioned last month, we are undergoing a spot audit by FTA on our CARES invoicing. So rather than submit new invoices until we get clearance that we adhere to policy on the prior invoices, we will hold off on submitting any new CARES invoicing. But once, and that actually will be ARPA invoicing that we do, since that does ARPA, which is the third leg of the stimulus, does have a timing deadline for the spend down of the funds. So we will switch from CARES invoicing to ARPA invoicing. Our year-over-year results on a good news front is that our total operating income is higher than last fiscal year for the first quarter, $3.8 million higher. And that is $3.4 million higher in passenger revenues. Our monthly pass sales, our annual pass sales, our stored value sales, and also our UPass sales are $1,600,000, $539,000, and $422,000 higher, respectively, than the first quarter of the prior fiscal year. Total operating expenses are $860,388 higher than last fiscal year, and that's predominantly due to higher employee expense. Our subsidy is $11.4 million lower than last fiscal year, and once again, that's due to the CARES invoicing and then also some invoicing and preventive maintenance, and the expectation that would be that this would normalize by the fiscal year end. From an operating reserve perspective, through the first quarter, we began the month with $128.6 million in operating reserve. We had cash inflows of $38.3 million from passenger fares and also other grant subsidies. We had cash outflows for the month September totaling 39.3 million, which went towards payroll, benefits, and other services. And we ended the month of September with $127.6 million in operating reserves. Can I answer any questions?
I don't think so. It's good to see. It looks like advertising revenue is bouncing back a little bit too.
Yeah, in addition, yeah,
That's
so
positive.
passenger revenue and advertising revenue.
Great. Any questions of the committee? Other board member questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much.
And that was our final agenda item. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? I'll second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned. We'll see you in November.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Michelle, Performance Oversight. Just take a minute and switch your papers, do whatever you need to do in preparation, and we'll start in, I don't know, 1 minute. Okay, everyone, good morning and welcome to Performance Oversight. It is now 9:42 a.m. Our first item of business this morning is going to be with roll call. So for our committee members this morning, Representative Austin Davis, are you here this morning?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And Representative Lori Migorski?
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you both very much. And any other committee members, if you're still on the call and joining us, could you please just state your name?
Michelle, I think you meant board members. You already called the committee. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Our second item of business then will be approval of our meeting minutes from September 16th. Are there any questions or corrections on our minutes? Hearing none, Representative Davis, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Representative Migorski, can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes stand as approved. Good morning. How are you doing, Mr. Trono?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm doing fine.
Great. We're
Good
going to
morning.
move forward with proposed resolutions. So we'll start with awarding of bids. So thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I have 3 items for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. The first is operators, supervisors, and maintenance uniforms. 4 firms accepted our invitation. 2 bids were received for these uniforms over a 2-year period with a 1-year option period. The low bidder, Bordova Innovations, proposed items that did not meet the minimum quality standards and specifications and therefore is ineligible for award. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder, which was Work America, the uniform company, estimated amount of $2,647,870 over a 2-year period. This price represents a 6% increase over the previous contracted price for these items 2 years ago. The prices determined the prices to be fair and reasonable and within funds budgeted. The lower bidder did not meet our, was disqualified for not meeting specification. They had to bid everything from head to toe and meet the quality standards within the clothing. Their bid was $761,000. Number 2, bottled water service. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of General Services had a cooperative purchasing program award to bottled water contract to Primo Water North America, and the authority wishes to make a purchase under the same terms and conditions of the state schedule. The contract is effective through June 30th of 2024, plus 2 1-year option periods, at the discretion of the state of Pennsylvania General Services. These services under this contract include the delivery of bottled drinking water and the provision of maintenance of the water coolers. It's our recommendation that we award under the same conditions of DGS to Primo Water North America an estimated amount of $140,000 for the initial contract period, which expires June 30th, 2024. The price represents a 49% increase over the previous contracted price for these services 2 years ago. These are the 5-gallon dispenser water containers. The past award was to WB Mason, and they actually came in second this time. They were over $1 more per gallon on the water service. The other prices were consistent with what was bid. Number 3, snow removal services, park and ride lots. 2 firms accepted the invitation and 2 bids were received for the snow removal for the park and ride lots over a 2-year period. It's our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidders. Snow and Ice Management Company for the north and west areas, an estimated amount of $130,500. Pittsburgh Lawn Care for the northeast and southeast areas, estimated amount of $85,200. This price represents a 16% decrease from the previous contracted price for this service 2 years ago. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Trona. Questions from any of our committee members?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say I'm pleased to see something actually decreased.
Yes.
I'll agree with that one. Any questions from other board members?
Yeah, Tony, so going back to the uniform one, did you say the low bidder was 761?
You had the bid, the low bidder was, their price was $761,000 for the entire contract.
2-year period.
Pardon me?
For the 2-year period.
For the 2-year period, but they had to bid everything they didn't bid everything, all the clothing. So you had to bid everything on the contract.
So it's non-responsive.
So it's non-responsive, correct.
Thank you, Mr. Letwin. Hearing no further questions, could I have a motion to approve and take this to the full board?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Trona. Moving on to item B on our agenda. Authorization to extend and amend agreement with Interstate Acquisition Services to provide real estate consulting services, and that will be with Mr. Mike Cetra. Good morning, Mr. Cetra.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Committee Chairwoman and committee members.
Somebody needs to mute their phone over there in the virtual world.
Thank you, Mr. Letwin. I think we have a radio silence here now. So this resolution would authorize Port Authority to extend and amend its agreement with Interstate Acquisition Services, a division of Century Engineering, to provide real estate consulting services for Port Authority. The services provided under this agreement include recurring property management and support services and park and ride and real estate asset management services, along with as-needed appraisal, review appraisal services, acquisition and disposal of real property support, transit-oriented communities program support, and capital project support. In accordance with Port Authority's procurement policy and procedures for competitive negotiations for professional and technical services, an evaluation committee was convened and a request for proposal number 1707 was publicly advertised in the summer of 2017. In September of 2017, following completion of the RFP process, the board authorized the award of the agreement to Century for an initial term of 3 years, with Port Authority retaining the option to extend the agreement for up to 2 additional years at the authority's sole discretion. The initial total not to exceed amount for the agreement was $1,062,000. In October of 2020, the board authorized Port Authority to exercise the first option year to extend the agreement one additional year through December 31st of this year, and increase the total authorized not to exceed amount of the agreement to $1,512,000 to continue to fund the services during that first option year. The agreement is, as I noted, currently set to expire at the end of this calendar year. Century has performed the required real estate consulting services in a satisfactory manner, and staff is recommending to the committee and the board at this time that Port Authority exercise the second option year to extend the agreement through December 31st, 2022, and increase the total not to exceed amount by $350,000 to ensure there are sufficient funds available to continue the services through what would be the fifth year of the contract. I would also highlight for the committee, particularly after Sue's great presentation on our DBE program, that our DBE participation on this contract has been consistently strong throughout the first 4 years of the contract. Each year, we have met an 18% DBE participation goal via Century's utilization of 2 WBE firms, Pauli Augustine Computer Services, which handles our real estate database management, and RIG Consulting Services, which handles our site survey and property inspection work. Subject to any member questions, I would respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Setter. Any questions from our committee? Hearing none. Any questions from other board members?
I just have one, Mike. Is this is the last option year? Then you have to go out and rebid after this?
That's correct. We have on our tentative schedule, looks like we'll be going out, next spring, early summer for the next RFP.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lowen. Mr. Davis, can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Lori, a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Setra. Moving on to authorization to award construction contract for the West Mifflin Garage Perimeter Paving and Site Improvements Project. Mr. Greg O'Hare. Thank you, Mr. O'Hare. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So this resolution seeks authorization to award the construction contract to the West Mifflin Garage Perimeter Paving and Site Improvement Project. What we see on the screen here is an aerial view out at West Mifflin Garage. Highlighted in yellow is the garage building itself. Highlighted in blue around the edges of the property are the parking areas for the Port Authority employees. Highlighted in green is the driveway and access area for the buses to enter the property and enter and exit the garage. Also shown in the aerial view on the left-hand side is temporary employee parking for during construction. On the right-hand side of the slide, there's two pictures that show the current condition out at the location. As you can see, the driveway and parking areas are in relatively poor condition. Next slide, please. The scope of work of the construction consists of full depth asphalt and concrete pavement replacement, concrete curb and sidewalk replacement, segmental retaining wall construction, site lighting upgrades, site drainage and underground stormwater detention, diesel and gasoline storage tank and dispenser replacement, as well as new fencing and guide rail installation. The project will be phased construction in order to minimize impact to the garage operational activities. The estimated contract duration is 611 calendar days from notice to proceed, so approximately 21 months. The low bidder was Swank Construction Company, LLC, with a bid of $7,998,101.85. The resolution also consists of a lease agreement for temporary parking and lot preparations not to exceed amount of $194,000 with DSH Associates, LLC for up to a 3-year term. Respectfully request the committee to move the resolution to the full board for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hare. Any questions of our committee members?
Yes, I have a question. Where is this temporary parking located?
Sure. Can you go to the previous slide, please? Perfect. Thank you. So on the left-hand side, across Lebanon Road there, Route 885, you can see the temporary parking across the street. So it's immediately across the street from the garage. So it's relatively easy access for the Port Authority employees.
Okay, are there crosswalks there?
There
Or
are crosswalks
anything-
there.
Okay, all right then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gorski. Any questions from our board members for Mr. O'Hare on this item? Okay, hearing none. Lori, could you make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Austin, thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Thank you. Continuing with Mr. O'Hare, authorization to enter into construction agreements with Norfolk Southern Railway Company and CSX Transportation Incorporated for the Martin Luther King Jr. East Busway Rehab Project.
Thank you. So this resolution seeks authorization to enter into construction agreements with Norfolk Southern Railway Company and CSX Transportation Incorporated for the Martin Luther King East Busway Bridge Rehabilitation Project. As you're aware, the Port Authority currently operates a 9.1 mile Martin Luther King Jr. East Busway that provides dedicated bus rapid transit service between downtown Pittsburgh and the eastern city and suburban neighborhoods and communities. Currently, we have state funding that's received to rehabilitate 4 bridges along the East Busway adjacent to and over railroad property. They include Penn Avenue Bridge, East Liberty Ramp Bridge, B&O Bridge, and North Homewood Avenue Bridge. This project's currently in design. This project requires multiple railroad agreements, including the Norfolk Southern Railway Company construction agreement with a value of $239,505, CSX Transportation Incorporated construction agreement with a value of $183,308, and temporary construction agreements with the railroad. The railroad company's scope includes temporary construction agreement needs, which is necessary for the Port Authority to complete design and bid the project, engineering drawing and review approval, installation and removal of temporary grade crossing, railroad flagging, and other coordination support activities required by the authority and its contractor from the railroads. This resolution will authorize the Port Authority to enter into these railroad agreements and any other related railroad agreements that may be necessary to complete the project. Next slide, please. So in order to illustrate and give a visual representation of the project area, this particular picture is out at our East Liberty Ramp Bridge, which you can see East Liberty Ramp Bridge in the foreground. And behind that is our Penn Avenue, which is on the far side, which can't be seen. This picture is looking outbound with the East Busway on the right-hand side of the screen and Norfolk Southern on the left-hand side of the screen. Highlighted in yellow on the left-hand side of the screen is the temporary access for construction. So as we'll be working on the bridge, we'll need to enter the Norfolk Southern Railroad property in order to perform work on our bridge structure. The upper right-hand portion of the screen with a red boundary around it, you can see an aerial view of what this looks like. This is adjacent to our East Liberty station out on the East Busway. Next slide, please. So this graphic is an illustration of our B&O Bridge, which carries the East Busway over CSX Railroad. CSX Railroad, you can see in the picture, running generally north to south, as well as the bridge is immediately adjacent to Norfolk Southern Railway, subsequently immediately adjacent to the East Busway throughout the entire length of the busway. So this is just another illustration of the bridge proximity in and around and over the adjacent railroads. Respectively request the committee, pending any questions, to move the resolution to the full board for consideration.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Hare. Any questions from our committee? Board members, any questions? Okay, great. Could I have a motion to approve and move it to full committee?
So moved.
I'm going to second that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to, thank you, Mr. O'Hare.
Hey, Michelle, it's John.
Yes.
I had a
Yes.
question.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, the question really wasn't about the resolution. It was a question I'm not sure that Greg knows the answer, was about the construction that's going on what is it, on Center, yeah, must be Center Avenue, that's affecting the busway. Is there, can he comment on that, or do we have any more information on when that's going to be completed?
On this Center Avenue construction project, the development,
Yes.
unfortunately, I don't know the timetable on that, but I can certainly find out and get back to you.
Right, because that's been going on for quite a while, and I wasn't sure whether there was an end date. It looks like they made some progress on the construction, but I'm not sure where it stands. So that's what I was looking at. That's all. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Tag. Thanks, Mr. O'Hare.
Thank you. We'll provide that
Go ahead.
information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on with Mr. Eric Bilski, and that will be for item E on our agenda this morning, authorization to enter into agreement for a pool of firms to provide general architecture and engineering contract services. Good morning. How are you doing, Mr. Bilski?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you. This resolution seeks authorization to enter an agreement for respondents to RFP number 2106 for general engineering and architectural services. The 6 proposals were received in July, on the July 29th. The term for the agreement is 4-year with 1 option year, and the total amount not to exceed for the pool of firms is $20 million. I've listed the service categories for your reference here: roadwork and site work design, and building and structure design. The 3 firms that we will award to are AECOM Technical Services, Inc., Michael Baker International, and Gannett Fleming Incorporated. The work will be issued on a task order basis as needed. The scope of the work will include support for authorities' capital program, engineering and architectural design, development of bid documents, construction phase support, and project management. I've included a picture to illustrate the type of project work they will design. This is the Castle Shannon Park and Ride lot. And as you can see, the pavement is distressed and it is in need of improvement. And this is actually on our capital program to move this project forward. And we envision this consulting agreement to provide that support. Pending any questions, I respectfully request the committee move this resolution to the full board.
Thank you very much. Any questions from our committee? Hearing none. Any questions from other board members? Hearing none. Representative Magorski, could I please have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
I'm going to second that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. And we're continuing with Mr. Bilski, the item F, authorization to enter into an agreement with a pool of firms for light rail transit systems contract services.
Thank you. This resolution seeks authorization to forward with awarding agreements in response to RFP 21-07 for light rail transit system contract services. In response to the RFP, we received 4 proposals on August 6th. The term of this agreement will be 5 years with 2 option years at the sole discretion of the authority. The total not to exceed amount for the pool of firms will be $25 million for this agreement. Again, work will be issued on a task order basis. The 2 service categories included in this agreement are LRV and LRT systems design in supporting our light rail system, and then way and facility systems design. The 3 firms that we will award the contracts to are WSP USA Incorporated, HNTB Corporation, and Mott McDonald LLC. The scope of services will include support for authorities' capital program, systems engineering design, development of bid documents, construction phase support, and project management. I included a picture here of one of our rail cars, and we envision this agreement providing support for rail car program management as we move forward and assess the rail cars and move into things related to their systems and equipment, as well as wayside, trackway facilities and equipment. And pending any questions, I respectfully request the committee move this to the full board for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bilski. Any questions from our committee? Hearing none, any questions for our board members? Hearing no questions, Representative Ms. Gorski, could I have a motion to move this forward, please?
So moved.
I'm going to second that motion. All in favor, say aye. Please state aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Moves forward to our full board meeting next Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bilski. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our agenda for today and our meeting. And I do not believe that we have a technology meeting today. And so I believe that closes our meeting. Can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Second. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. See you next Friday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, JT.